Hi, everyone, and welcome. My name is Andre Ferreira. I'm Senior Communications Manager at the Canada Media Fund. I'm here alongside my colleagues Tamara David and Diego Briseño, who co-lead the support for underrepresented communities, as well as Caroline Chopra. She's Deputy Director of the Portfolio Management at the CMF Program Administrator. We will provide today an overview of COVID-19 programs to support Black people and people of color creators. Before doing that, I'll just go ahead and share my screen. And we'll provide a bit of housekeeping. We've muted all participants, and we kindly ask that you reserve all questions for the end. You can ask your questions by typing them up in the comments section. For those who may not be familiar with the CMF, I'd now like to take a few minutes to go over some of the key activities of the CMF in terms of our funding. So in addition to funding Canadian television and digital media content to the tune of $350 million a year, we also work to create a positive environment for Canadian content through promotion of the content we support, as well as the promotion of Canada as a co-production partner of choice. And we also work to foster and develop the industry through support for the sector, including organizations working in the screen-based industry. And we do all this with the goal of creating an environment where Canada's talent and stories transcend platforms and borders, triggering emotion, innovation, and ideas. We are a public-private partnership, so we do all this work with the financial support of the Government of Canada, who provides 43% of the CMF's annual budget, as well as Canada's cable, satellite, and IPTV distributors, who account for 52%. In terms of our main funding activities, the bulk of the CMF's funding goes through the convergence stream, which supports the creation of television shows and related digital media content. And since 2010, we've provided over $3.3 billion in funding to over 3,200 projects. Projects must be in the drama, documentary, variety and performing arts, or children's and youth genres. And these are a few examples of the content we've helped fund in the past few years. In addition to the convergence stream, we provide funding through the experimental stream to support innovation in media. This has the objective of encouraging the development of leading edge interactive digital media content and software applications. And since 2010, we've funded over 331 million, provided over 331 million in funding to over 600 projects. And again, these are some of the examples of the projects we funded in the various applications, whether it's interactive content, games, software enabling technologies, or apps, and that is again through the experimental stream. The CMF was formed 10 years ago, and since then we've triggered 13 billion in production activity in Canada. We've funded content in 25 languages, including various Indigenous languages. We funded 615 Indigenous projects, and thanks to our gender balance measures, 48% of productions the CMF has funded are produced by women. We recently made a commitment to doing more to improve equity and inclusion for Black people and people of color creators in Canada. And this is part of what we'll discuss today. A few weeks after the world went into lockdown this past April, the Government of Canada announced it would provide $500 million to Canada's cultural and sporting sectors to help artists, athletes, and their organizations during the COVID-19 pandemic. In July, the CMF announced that 13.3 million of the Heritage Emergency Relief Fund administered by the CMF would be devoted to underrepresented groups, including support for companies owned and led by Black people and people of color. More recently, in September, we announced the top up for companies owned by Black people and people of color. And starting this week, we're opening the allocation for companies owned by Black people and people of color. And I'd like now to turn it to Caroline, who will go over the eligibility criteria and how to apply process for this latest allocation of funds. Caroline?
Thank you, Andre. Oh, is there an echo, or we're good?
We're good.
Okay. Hi, everyone. We have 164 people online with us, so we're very happy to have this presentation for you just to go over the guidelines and the application process for the allocation for companies owned by Black people and people of color. And I work at Telecom Canada. I'm a deputy director with the CMF program administrator team. We have 4 offices across the country, 4 telecom offices, and we have coordinators, analysts, deputy directors, and a big team that administers all of the CMF funding programs, including the emergency relief funds that were announced by Heritage since April, and this program, which opens on Thursday, November 19th. So just the background as to why we have people from CMF and Telecom on the line. So as I mentioned, this program is opening on Thursday morning. The application form will be available via Dialogue, which is the application form platform. The allocation, the total allocation is $5 million, and the funds are allocated on a first come, first served basis until all the funds are depleted, or until December 17th, whichever comes first. So this program is open for a month. However, if we receive enough applications to allocate the $5 million sooner, we will close the program when the funds are depleted, if before December 17th. When you arrive on the landing page of this program, you'll see there's 2 documents. There's the criteria or guidelines documents, and there's also an attestation form, which is the only required document to be associated or uploaded with your Dialogue application form. And it's very important that you read through the criteria document and read through each bullet of the attestation, because the attestation form is really the only document that will be part of our analysis or evaluation of your eligibility. And so because it's a few pages long, the guidelines, and I think the attestation is 2 pages long, we just pulled out like the most, not important because they're all important, but just a few points to go over together today. And if you have questions about other points, I'll have my email address and our coordination team's email address at the end of my section. And I'll invite you to email me directly if you have questions about some points that were not covered today. We could change slides. So who is eligible for the allocation for companies owned by Black people and people of color? It's a corporation, so we will not issue a contract or a CMF payment to an individual. It has to be a for-profit Canadian controlled active parent company in the business of audiovisual content, has its head office in Canada and carries out its activities in Canada, is majority owned and controlled by an individual or individuals that are members of a racialized community that meet the Employment and Equity Act definition of visible minority. And as I mentioned, it's a for-profit company. And also there are 5, if we could change slides. There are 5 ways that a company project could make you eligible for this allocation. Can I? Oh, okay. So between January 1st and January 1st, 2013 and February 28, 2020, if the production company has produced linear content that was made available on broadcast or on a digital platform in Canada or outside of Canada, or if the applicant company received financial commitment for development of the linear content for the intention of eventually producing that content, those two types of projects will trigger eligibility. And if you're a producer who produces or works on interactive content, we'll look at interactive content on the next slide. There are three ways if you're a producer of interactive content. One, you have a project, again, this is between January 1st, 2013 and February 28, 2020. If you had a project that was produced, released domestically or internationally for commercial exploitation, and your interactive content has to be linked to entertainment or culture. Or if your company received funding from a third party for prototyping, again, with the objective of having your interactive content eventually commercially exploited, or if you participated in a domestic or international incubator, accelerator, or formal membership program, all these three options will allow you to be eligible for this program. So on the attestation form, all 5 options will be there, and you will have to check one. You don't have to, your project doesn't have to hit all 5. We only ask you for a minimum of one checkbox. And so for the amount of funding per company, if your company has already received $70,000 or more from a heritage emergency relief fund program since May, because I think we opened in April or May, you can receive up to $60,000, and it's a non-repayable contribution. And if your company has received less than $70,000 from a heritage emergency relief fund program, so 0 to $69,999, the maximum contribution from this allocation for your company is $35,000, and again, it's a non-recoupable contribution. And just gonna speak briefly about how to apply. So on as of November 19th, as of Thursday around 9 a.m. Eastern time, you'll be able to go in dialogue and access the application. The application form will have the word November in brackets, so just ensure that it's CMF EF, so for emergency fund, BP and POC allocation, and in brackets November. It will be the application form for this program. And you will be asked to upload your signed attestation and submit, and we will be going through all the applications in order of first come, first serve. And don't worry, we understand that Canada has various time zones, so we don't timestamp applications, we date stamp them. So anything that is submitted on November 19th will be considered a November 19th application, not 8 a.m. versus 12 noon versus 5 p.m. If you're new to Dialogue, the the address here, telephone.ca/en/login will take you to the home, the page where you could create an account. So if you're a new client, you just click on you are a new client, and you'll enter your name and first name, last name, email, and just start through the process of enrolling your company. And there is on that same page dialogue user guide, which will give you step-by-step for navigating dialogue. And finally, I just wanted to bring your attention to the email address for a coordination team. So this is our coordinators who work at Telefilm, who will be able to help you if you have any questions just about like CMF programs, this program, how to complete the application form. And my email and my phone number is always also available. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thanks, Caroline.
Can I just add a quick note
Yes.
regarding it's just regarding the user guide. There's a link to the user guide within the criteria on the CMF website. That link takes you to a previous version of the user guide. So please make sure to use the most up-to-date version, which is on the Telefilm website. And it's updated as of November with the correct enrollment, dialogue enrollment team email address, which is the one that you will need to use to become a client.
Thank you, Zoe.
Thanks. I'd now like to turn it over to Tamara.
Great. So I'm going to talk just briefly about the sector development program, which is also for Black and people of color. But this is the fund through the CMF that is for organizations. So think film festivals, training initiatives, those sorts of businesses that are generally in the nonprofit sector. And we're really looking for proposals from the community around projects that will benefit and impact multiple companies, multiple creators, multiple producers. So I think that's an easy way of thinking about it, that these are funds for collective and initiatives that will benefit collectives to develop the screen-based sector for Black and people of color, versus the program we just went through, of course, is funding directly to production companies. So this funding envelope was really set up to address two specific and urgent needs. One is to help these organizations deal with the impacts of COVID-19, and the other is to help them also deal with the impacts of systemic racism and realizing how many of these organizations need work and support to help the communities that the CMF is looking to reach through these funds with access, with capacity building issues, and with all of these things. So this program is quite similar to a regular program the CMF has called Sector Development, but this is specifically for organizations which are owned and controlled. And if you're a nonprofit, then that means your board of directors by Black and people of color. And these are for projects which could be capacity building, training, professional development initiatives, mentorship, anything within that space, or also the sort of internal capacity building work that these organizations may need to do to expand their programs, to pivot because of COVID. So that could be research, it could be strategic planning, any sort of those organizational development and stabilization areas of work. And we're really looking for applications that can demonstrate through their project how you're having impacts within the region you serve. So whether that's nationally, if you're a national organization, at a provincial level, at a city or regional level, depending really on the scope of your organization. Can we flip to the next page? Yep, so again, who can apply is Canadian controlled companies. Of course, we're looking to make sure that you're a company here in Canada. And as well, to understand, we will ask you in the application for the makeup of your board and your management team and from which racialized communities they're represented. We go to the next page. I think.
Sorry, yeah, there's a bit of a bug here.
It's okay.
Oh.
Yeah. Maybe the previous page, which was just about eligible costs. Rich, I mean, I can speak to you very quickly. The eligible cost is quite wide ranging, and it's really for us to see the logic in your application about the project you're trying to do and what are the costs and the budget lines you would need to have fulfilled in order to be able to do that. So what's there is really a guideline, but do look at the guidelines in the application because there are some costs that we won't be allowing, things like capital expenses, things like travel, and I'll speak to the last page as well then. Yeah, so how do you apply? So this is an application that's not through Dialogue. So I think that's the big thing to point out. And you will be sending your application as a PDF to Diego over email. And this application is due on November the 27th. Again, similar to the applications through Dialogue, there is no specific time on the 27th that it has to come in. But whatever we receive by the end of day will be the stuff that we'll consider to that call. And we're really looking again for all of the details on the project for you to clearly articulate who your organization is, what is the need for the project, what are the activities you're going to be carrying out to deliver the project, and what are the costs related to those activities. And then for you to give us a bit of a profile about the leadership, both of the organization, the staff who will administer the project, and as well the board of directors. That's it for me on that fund.
Thank you, Tamara. There's an annoying bug here. We'll now take questions. There's a number of questions that have come through already, so we'll go over those and hopefully answer.
I'll probably been following the questions. I'll probably address one and I'll open the discussion maybe with Tamara. There's a few questions about why, this is a broader question. It's not easy to answer in short about why there's two tiers and why is there a group that's receiving more funding and one that is receiving less funding, and why the greater funding is going for companies who already received the funding. So I think we can, Tamara, I don't know if you want to address that, or I can also help. I can, okay, go ahead. Okay, I'll start. So this program is done in consultation with industry, with other producers. In those consultations, there is a need and there's a request to still keep providing support for companies owned and led by racialized producers, even those who already existed that are still in difficulty. So, and some of them are the intermediate size. Obviously, there are companies who are a little bit more established than the ones that are coming in the new phase, but they're requesting still to have some support. It is flattened, so it's not like, even though there's bigger or small companies, they're flattened to a fixed amount. But yeah. Basically, that's that tier, and then the tier below it, it'd be equally divided among any newcomers. It's a difficult formula. I mean, we couldn't be selected, so we had to have a flat way to address satisfying both type of producers. Obviously, we had to cut points somewhere. Unfortunately, I'm sure people who are in the middle is not the greatest place to be, but that was the result from our consultations with different stakeholders, both in the French market and the English market. I don't know, Tamara, you want to add to that?
You summarized it well.
Perfect. And there are various other questions that we'll attempt to address. Let's see, let's start here. Are there two different programs? First, the one introduced by Ms. Chopra and then the one by Ms. DeWitt. Yes, I would say so. One is a program, and the other one is to support creators. The other one is to support organizations. Maybe if there's anything else you want to fill people in, but it is two different programs. There will be a recording available afterwards.
I've seen a few questions about the date of incorporation. So everyone understands this is a fund that comes as for support for COVID. That's the context that this funding came from. It comes from the federal government to support companies that that were in difficulty during COVID. So that had some strings attached to it. Therefore, there were companies that existed before COVID, and therefore that were having difficulty throughout the period of time since COVID. And that's kind of the reason why that February 28th, 2020 is a requirement. So there are companies who already existed before COVID-19 happened. I'm sure there's a lot of people who've been, probably new companies or companies that want to apply. Unfortunately, that would not be benefiting, but that is the circumstances, the reality of the funding we got, and that's where the strings attached to it.
Here's an interesting one. Development support. Can something like the Directors Guild of Canada Diversity and Inclusion Committee apply for something like this?
Answer that in regards to the sector development. So that is a specific fund based on community consultations. It's only open to organizations that are led, and that means staff as well as board by either Black or people of color. So in that case, DGC would not be an eligible applicant to that program.
Thank you, Tamara.
I also see someone asking about incorporation for the sector development. So it is a little bit more flexible, meaning that we don't have a fixed time, but obviously the funding has to be allocated to a constituted entity. Obviously, most of the time it's to a nonprofit, but there could be cases like the application says. It could be what we're discouraging is production companies to apply. Other than very specific circumstances, you can probably check with us if there's very specific, maybe a conglomerate of people who are applying. But in general, it's to nonprofits, and they could be in recently constituted or even in the process of it. That's different than from the allocation for production companies.
Thank you. Here's another interesting one. Why would companies who have already received 70K or more receive so much more than smaller companies who have received nothing? Could you explain this thinking?
I think, Diego, you answered. You did some modeling and.
Yeah. Maybe Tamara, you can jump in it. I mean, I explained my words. Maybe Tamara has another way of putting it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really to sort of rephrase what Diego has already said about understanding the different size and scope of organizations in the industry and making sure that we're distributing money to all of them. And of course, there's no perfect solution, I think, sometimes, but we need to get money out to eligible companies and out to companies in the BPOC sector as quickly and as with the least, I guess, bells and whistles in terms of asking everyone to fill out long applications and to make sure that people can receive this money. So we're trying to do this. Diego's done really important modeling that I think has helped inform these decisions about what we know to date on the size, scope, and number of BPOC companies in Canada, and to make sure that we're taking into consideration all of the viewpoints that we have heard through the consultations.
I would have to add to that. I mean, I saw a few of them, and we all agree that this is not a perfect system, and our in an ideal world we'll be able to evaluate case by cases and determine how much money needs each company. Because of the context of COVID, we could not do that. We acknowledge that there are companies who are established but still not completely established, or most of the companies. We had an assessment of the company that did receive already funding, and in our perspective, there's still companies that require more support to be able to remain sustainable. And from our perspective, also, there's no huge BIPOC-owned companies, BPOC, especially Black and people of color companies, are really completely well off. Obviously, they're still struggling, and I think we have to determine that there's some of these companies require still some long-term support still to go through the current situation, and of course making a decent amount of money available for new companies to come on board into the CMF. Oh my God.
Thank you, Diego. We have here someone raising their hand. Just a minute.
Someone asking about applying as an individual. Neither of these programs can be for individuals. You know, I think we said it, but I think it's pretty clear. We encourage you to find partnerships or other organizations. Again, in the sector of development, we're open. It could be in constitution or about to constitute, but I mean, we're hoping to have organizations, distributors, agents, different type of institution can apply.
I have a few attendees raising their hands. Presumably they would like to ask their questions live through voice. So I will unmute these participants and hopefully we'll be able to answer their questions. If you can just bear with me for a minute. Allison, I am muting you now.
Hi there. Yes, thanks so much for taking my question. Appreciate it. Just wanted to get it in. Is this a one-time for the sector development fund? Is this a one-time allocation, or is it something that's going to be ongoing? I mean, you just touched on the fact that you're talking about BIPOC companies not having a lot of support, being obviously less in a position of less financial stability than peers in other community groups. So is this something that's going to be ongoing? Is this an ongoing commitment? Because what I've seen already so far is that, you know, obviously this is something that is new, and you're creating the deadline for eligibility for incorporation February 28th, 2020. And then, you know, now this fund comes out, and of course you're having a webinar 10 days before it's due. I wonder what the commitment is going to be like going forward, because of course a lot of us may not be in a position to have an incorporated company by February 28th, which forces us to partner or find other avenues.
Maybe I can answer that. Thank you for that question, at least in regards to sector development. So just to be clear, the sector development is for organizations. This is for nonprofit organizations doing projects which benefit multiple creators. And for that specific application, as Diego said, we're a little bit less concerned if at the time of applying, you are in the process of incorporating and perhaps it's not done. The applications that require you to have been incorporated from last February is the application form for the producer funding for the production company. So hopefully,
okay.
Was there another part to that question that I didn't answer for you?
No,
Yeah,
no.
if it's going to be available, I mean,
Right.
I think, yeah, I don't know, Tamara. I can say just simply, obviously right now we're using, this is allocation from COVID money, so it's very specific money from the present time. Our hope, and this is, I'm talking from within, you know, especially the work we're doing with Tamara and me, is to create something more sustainable, but that's still in the works. Your input and your push and your questions and all your participation will help us convince everyone that there's a need for more long-term and sustainable system, both to support production companies and organizations in the sector development. But still, we can't confirm it. Hopefully it will happen. That's what we're trying to work on.
Perfect.
A few questions about projects. Go ahead.
Oh, no, there was a question to go back to slide 14. So maybe while Diego is answering a question.
Yeah, I see a lot of questions about specific projects. I just want to repeat that, and it's a question we get constantly. This is not about your project. This is about the company. So, you know, questions about if this project or that project eligible. It's really previous work, basically. The condition of having at least one project that has been funded is to make sure that it's an active company and that has received some third-party support. But it's not based on any project. You don't have to submit a project or any state. We will not analyze the type of project or what you have currently in your slate. So, you know, people are asking if, you know, web series or a short film or anything, that's not really, you know, a requirement or something we would be asking, or Telefilm will be asking for your application. Go ahead, Caroline.
There was a question just to look at the slide 14. I'm not sure if there was an actual question.
Someone is asking if they can contact me for sector development. You can write me an email. The email is in the application. Yeah, so you can email me. I will decide meaning I'll see if it's specifically, if depending on the question, if it's for me directly, or I will send it through our system to someone else. If it's not, but you can write to me for sure. And if it's really specific, yeah, I'm happy to talk to you individually. I mean, it's very little time, but we can have a little short conversation about specifics about sector development. Yeah, go ahead, Caroline.
Sorry, I'm reading questions. There was a question here about if for a non-for-profit theater company applied for sector development.
Go ahead, Tamara.
Yeah, I don't know what company that person's talking about, but I mean, the intention is to fund BIPOC companies in the screen-based sector. So I would want to understand how a theater company is doing some work in that space, who else they are working with, and what the rationale is about why they may be trying to apply. So I think maybe that's an applicant that could email us so that we could talk to them about what their intent was behind that question.
Perhaps if we could take another voice question. I'm unmuting Paul. Go ahead, Paul.
All right, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, thanks first of all for this seminar. It's great, and for taking the time to do this. I had a couple questions. One, I think I just found it. I was looking for the name of the application that Chopra was sharing with us.
Referring, yeah, I posted it in the chat.
I think I got it. Is the ef.bpnpoc allocation? Is that correct?
November, yes.
November.
The word
Okay.
November will be at the end.
Okay, fantastic. Second is, so in the past when submitting documentation, sometimes as a producer, you get, there's additional, I wouldn't say points or, what's the word I'm looking for? If you have females in certain roles, you tends to show a bit better in terms of writers and producers and that sort of thing. Do you imagine, or at some point, introducing a caveat for people of color to do have similar benefits?
In terms of policy and program design at the CMF?
Yes.
That's a good question. I don't know, Tamara, do you want to?
Sorry, I was muted. I mean, yeah, we're in the process right now of doing and continuing to do community consultations about, you know, what are the best practices and approaches and policies going forward with ensuring that the CMF's programs can become more accessible to a number of represented communities, Black, Indigenous, and people of color being a focus within that. So that is one of the things we're looking at. How has that worked? In regards to gender, what best practices are working in other funding agencies, with other work on equity and inclusion. So we're sort of looking at all of that so that we can make the best recommendations going forward.
But I think, can you hear me still? But I think
Yes.
You've seen some great results with adding that in terms of the female growth. I think you were stating earlier.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
I understand,
I think,
but I think it
yeah,
would be,
no, Paul, I think you're onto something, and we're actively looking at that. We're not there yet. We can't give you any guarantee yet, but it's definitely one of the important options we're looking at. It's a little bit more complicated sometimes because of there's a level of complexity, I have to say, about self-identification that we still have to sort out almost technically. It's a little bit delicate to have third parties talking about other people's identification, whereas traditionally the gender, it used to be, but it's getting a little bit also complex as well. But you know, the fact of people declaring a female crew was a little bit easier. I think more and more we're going to see some level of complexity, and we're trying to work with that. And just to give you, yeah, it requires also some technical elements to it to make sure that it's really something that can be backed with some support from the actual people who are involved.
Oh,
Not
fantastic.
just producers stating. But it's in the works, and we're looking at it for sure.
Well, thank you. And I think if you ever need extra people on your
Thanks for your
team
question.
to talk to people in the community, just let us know, please.
Yeah, sure. And send us email stuff. I think we're interested. We're in that process right now, and I think I would have to just add that we're this program we're launching is and I'm sure there's through the cracks. It's not really something we learn from it more than anything. See who are those who didn't get it, why, and we're hoping for something more sustainable. Someone asked for the next year and even further for 2022. That's where we're looking. We're aiming to have.
Oh, thank you. That's great. Thank you.
Bigger changes for 2022. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Thank you, Diego.
There's a question. If your corporation receives some funds from another government aid, COVID-19 related, can you apply for this? And it's written in the guidelines and in the attestation. It's okay that your company received relief funds before. However, this allocation is not to cover the same cost. So we won't be digging into where the allocation will be spent on, but you are signing an attestation that you're not paying for the same cost with two different relief funds. So yes, you can apply to the November 19th program if you've already received some funding.
For those asking where the recording of this webinar will be, it will be posted to the CMF website and our YouTube channel.
Oh boy, there's a lot of questions. There's another, again, the sector development for non-for-profit, for-profit. I think most of the applicants we've received so far are non-profits. We are open to seeing other systems. The one application that we probably could see would be refuse the most would be another production company. I think we're open to having distribution companies, agencies, other types of companies that are not production companies apply. But I think a lot of the applications so far we've been interested in are from nonprofits, but we're open to see other type of organizations apply. Sorry, I'm almost like jumping randomly, but bear with us. There's a lot.
We have.
Go ahead, pick up any. There's a question about someone who has two companies. Maybe Caroline, you can go out to it. So the same directors with two companies, would they both be eligible? I think that's for you. I don't know. That's technical a little bit for me.
Sure. I'm the same directors for two companies. I don't have.
Yeah, I guess it's a company that has like a development and a production company, maybe something like that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, as I mentioned, there are 5 different types of projects or options that would trigger eligibility for this allocation, and you only need to be eligible for one. So on the attestation form, you could just tick the box of one that is applicable to your company. If the question was that there are 2 shareholders or directors, owner of the company itself, the majority owned, it has to be a majority owned company from an individual or individuals that are Black people or people of color. So if it's minority owned, the company would not be eligible for this allocation.
again, if the same company can apply for development and for sector development and the other location, I would argue no. If you're receiving already as a production company, that will be kind of the least of our priorities to support the same company for a sector development. We want to emphasize, we're getting many questions about sector development does not mean like development of project. Sector development does mean, initiatives, industry initiatives that are supporting a multitude of stakeholders, of people, obviously racialized being the focus of this, hoping to support creators, any professional in the field of media, the screen industries.
Perhaps we can take another voice call. Natasha, I am unmuting you.
Hi, yes, you answered my question, but I was just asking if for this relief funds, the only document needed is just the attestation form. You don't need to include like all the projects that your company is doing. For this relief fund, only the attestation form is all that's needed to apply.
That's correct. And eventually when we will move to contract, if your company is not already registered and we don't have an administrator set up for the dialogue account, we'll ask you for additional corporate documents. But to be deemed complete as of November 19th, just the dialogue application form and the attestation.
Yeah, I can just add that there'll be in the contract, there'll be, I mean, if you're accepted in, I mean, if you're managed to apply and your application is processed, there'll be other documents, but they're really, there's a questionnaire, and there's another form that will be for the successful applicants, but that will be later on. But for applications, there's only the one attestation and obviously filling up the dialogue form.
There's a question here about what is the difference between linear and interactive projects. So linear content is just content that you press play and it plays, and there's no interactivity between the audience or the viewers and the content. And interactive projects are digital media projects like immersive storytelling projects and games. Installations that is not just like seen on traditional broadcast or on a digital distribution platform.
Yeah, in CMF, we use the language convergent and experimental, which kind of separates. So convergent being more traditional, mostly TV content, and experimental being everything else, gaming, VR, so on. I also want to say there's some questions about, again, if a company has multiple companies or something. I think you have to be aware that Telefilm will go through the applications before we okay them. So there'll be a review, and if there's a parent company with multiple sub companies, I think those things will be spotted in the process.
Yes, we encourage you to apply with the parent company, and that's what the eligible applicant definition and the criteria indicates, that please apply with the parent company.
There's a question about dialogue. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Some people I'm sure people who have never applied have a dialogue is a platform. Maybe Caroline, you can explain that Telefilm and CMF share, because there's a bit of confusion if we apply for Telefilm or CMF. Maybe you can help us with that. Simple terms for someone who's never done it.
Yes, so as I mentioned, Telefilm Canada is the program administrator of the CMF programs. So all the day-to-day, the application, the contracting, the final cost, the payments, the general questions and queries about applying for funding and all the programs' different mechanism. It's all administered by a team that works at Telefilm Canada. So I work at Telefilm, but on behalf of the CMF. So we are the CMF program administrators, and all the applications to funding programs for CMF programs go through Telefilm's dialogue platform. I could put the link again in the chat if that could be helpful, just to get you started. But also when you reach the CMF, the homepage of this program, there's a link that says apply now, and if you click on apply now, it will take you to the same site. So I'm just gonna type it in here if it could be helpful for you.
Yeah. I think this is a relevant question about if there's any reporting back, if companies, production companies have to report back of how they spend the funding. So maybe,
They will
Caroline,
not be required to report to the CMF. However, I would speak with my accountant when it's tax season, because certain aids may have to be reported on for Revenue Canada. But for just to receive the funding, we will not be following up further to the payment.
Yes, that's important. As a question that we get often is, this is money allocated to the company. The companies are free to use it as best they can. Obviously, next year they just have to be aware of the anything related to taxes and declarations, financial declarations to the agencies. But yeah, it's a flexible money. You can apply it to a project, or you can apply it to just keep the company afloat. You can apply it to, so for anything from paying rent to anything required to pay people, contractors, anything relevant to the subsistence of the company. Deadlines, they're asking about when can people start seeing their money. I think maybe, I don't know, Caroline, do you have information about this?
It will be very soon after the application. It depends how many we received also on the 19th. If we are oversubscribed on the 19th, which, it's $5 million, but it's not impossible. Maybe it could happen. We still have to review all the applications and make sure the attestation is complete, and before we move forward to contract. But it will not be long. It should be 10 days before we start. Within 10 days. Within 10 days,
yeah. I think sector development is similar. It will be, we don't have a date for sector development, but it will be as soon as we can. It will be in December, as soon as possible. That we announce the projects that are successful, and then we'll start the process to trigger the funding. So it will be very soon. And we understand, the question included the fact that there's some reporting in the sector development. There is reporting. So just to make sure we're talking to program sector development, there is reporting. There's 2 reports, a midterm report and a final report by June. Tamara, the first one, I forget, the first midterm is February, I think. Yeah, but it basically reports. It's actually something you should include in for those who are here for the sector development. It would be important for you to already outline what are the outputs you're hoping to provide the CMF. So think about it. It's something important. Yeah, report, but probably if there's anything else you can report back in terms of results, it'll be great for us to have, and that you mentioned it in your application. There's a question about people of color. Do Middle Eastern producers qualify? Yes. And when you apply, you'll see a section where there's the specific groups. I don't know if there are any other questions about that, but for sure, Middle Eastern are eligible, as long as Latin Americans, Black, and Asia, Southeast Asian, East Asians. I don't know if we're forgetting somebody, but in general, those are the main groups.
Because there are so many questions. I just wanted to say, sorry, Diego, because there's so many questions that we may not have been able to see on time before 3 o'clock. Please email me, and I'll connect with you and answer your questions about the program that opens on November 19th, because it's going on the chat and the Q&A at the same time. And I just, in case we miss something that is important to you that we haven't answered, please email me, Caroline Chopra, for the relief fund, and Diego for the sector development.
No peer juries. Yeah, so there's no jury again for the allocation. There's no jury, but for the sector development, there is an internal jury that will evaluate all the applications.
What is the program turnaround time for results? So when can applicants expect to hear back on their applications?
For both?
I presume that it's not clear, but I guess, yeah, for both.
I think Caroline answered for the, yeah, go ahead.
No, as I mentioned, I would think that within 10 days we'll be issuing contracts, maybe even a week.
And for sector development, I would expect like 2 weeks maximum since the deadline being 27th of November. So I would say, but within 2 weeks we'll be given hopefully some results. There's no exact date, but our goal is to get everything done before the holidays.
Just want to thank everyone for taking the time and spend the hour with us. There's still 137 participants, and it's really nice to see your interest and for you to spend your hour with us. And I think this is the first Telefilm CMF collaboration like this. So.
Yeah, it's going good. There's asking a jury for the sector development. Yes. If there's BPOC people who will be on the jury, yes. The answer is yes. It'll be majority BPOC people on the jury.
Well, yes, like Caroline said, thank you all for taking the time. If there are questions, like Caroline mentioned, email her for the BPOC allocation and Diego for sector development. A number of you emailed prior to the webinar with some questions. We will forward those questions to the appropriate people on this panel to answer to. And hopefully we'll get back to you with any other questions you may have. Again, thank you and good luck.
Yeah, thank you everyone, and thanks for the feedback. We're looking forward for the feedback. I encourage everyone to contact organizations. There's a few across the country. We're in contact with these organizations. They're multiple, and I'm sure most of you know them. But if not, we'll keep you informed about some of these organizations. Because, sometimes very difficult to talk individually. But I think if you organize and you're in groups, sometimes it's easier to coordinate discussions and to get feedback and do consultation. Thank you very much. Tamara, I don't know, want to add something to that?
Thank you. And I think, as has been said, reach out to us if you have further questions. And we look forward to getting the applications.
All right.
Thanks a lot.
Cheers. Bye.
Now.